Hi everyone, I'm Anna. Today we've got a Honda S2000 from 2007. A little bit of a tongue twister, but that's all right. The car only has 40,000 miles on it, but the owner would like to swap out the black interior for a nice red leather interior. It's a pretty common modification, but we've got some actual seat leather replacements that we'll be installing, as well as door card leathers that we will be putting in as well. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get started, and we'll see you at the end. So here we're gonna start by taking off the door cards. There are probably 3 screws hidden behind little plastic panels, and then there are several body panel clips along the bottom that you'll use a panel tool to pop off, and then lift the whole panel over the window glass edge and unplug everything. Next, we'll take off all of the bits on the door card, so the handle and the power window and door switch. And then there's also a spacer on the back of the door card that you take off as well. Next, the middle panel of the door card, where the leather is actually attached to, has to come off. There are several screws around the border of that white plastic piece that you'll remove. Next, cut the foam around the speaker bezel to just give you some room to pull the panel off. And then it's kind of tricky, but you'll pop it up and out of the rear edge there. And that's the door card off. And then to remove the leather from that white plastic piece, you'll use a household steamer or a professional steamer if you have access to one, to loosen up the leather and the adhesive, and then just slowly work it off the plastic. There we go. Next, before you put any glue anywhere near these pieces, make some alignment notches and trim up your new leathers if they are not the right size. Use your steamer to loosen up the leather and make it more pliable. And then for adhesive spray, we used 3M Super 77 multi-purpose adhesive. It's a very strong, kind of like headliner spray, but I think it's stronger. And just spray evenly 2 layers on both sides of the pieces. And then very carefully lay them together. This stuff sticks like immediately after it's tacky, and it won't come off again. And then use a towel to put pressure evenly and spread out the leather. You can kind of stretch it into place and force it into the shape of that plastic panel. And then just to make this adhesive process easier, we did 1/2 first and then did the other half, and it made it a lot easier to coordinate and not mess up and have it look terrible in the end. And then again, just smooth it out really well. Make sure you get nice even pressure everywhere that you put glue. And go ahead and let it dry for a bit, then flip it over and trim off all of the excess from your new leathers. Tuck away anything you want to save. Then go ahead and tuck over the edges and glue them down. Then start cutting out the holes for the electronics using like an Exacto knife is what I used. And you can leave a little bit of a border around the edges because all of that excess will be covered by the plastics of the electronics. Then you can attach your door handle and the electronics and the electronics. That one kind of tucks in and then pops through, and then there's a screw to hold it in place. Those are all the pieces you put back on right now. And then we'll go ahead and reinstall the middle panel into the rest of the door card. Try and line up all the bolt holes first. And then I added a little bit of blue thread locker to each of those screws to make sure that it doesn't come apart. Just go ahead and tighten those pretty snug. And then go ahead and put everything else that you took off back on, and we should be ready to put back on the car. So you'll start at the top and kind of push down after you hook it over the window glass edge, and then make sure all that the clip holes are lined up before you pop them in, unless you have replacements for those clips, and then it doesn't really matter. Attach the handle frame and all your screws. And that's it. Now we're going to start on the seats. So first step is removal. There's 4 bolts that hold the seats and rails to the frame, and a couple electronics underneath that you'll have to figure out how to unplug. It's kind of a pain. Make sure you scratch the paint pulling your seats out, and be sure to greet any wildlife that is supervising. Go ahead and remove the plastic recliner handle with plastic tools so you don't damage anything, and give it a good yank. Remove the plastic panel under that handle to gain access to the bolts holding the seat back and the cushion together. There are 2 bolts on this side and a nut on the other side. And then to separate the two, you'll want to kind of lift and hook it off the other side. Now take the seatbelt guide off the seat back. And then we can start on the seat cushion underside. So there's 4 bolts and a couple nuts that hold the seat rails to that metal seat cushion frame. And then a whole bunch of plastic panels holding all the cords and wires and everything that you'll need to pop off. And then once you get all those off, the whole thing should come off as an assembly. Next, go ahead and start prying off all of the hog rings that hold the old seat leather to the metal. There are several along each side. You can use a screwdriver or pliers, whatever makes it easy. You could probably cut them, but it might be kind of hard to get bolt cutters in there, so prying tools work well enough. Now you can go ahead and start removing all these internal hog rings that are underneath the leather. You'll work your way down both sides and across the centers, kind of in stripes, just to pull back the leather so you can get access to each ring. And then be careful at this point to not damage the foam unless you are planning on doing foam repair or replacement at this time. Usually only if your car has high mileage. You'll use a screwdriver or similar prying tool to remove the upholstery U channel. It's kind of a pain, but if you're patient, you should be able to pop it off pretty easily. Now go ahead and start removing the hog rings from the inside of the seat back. There are several up both sides. And from the middle cushion on the seat back. And there are two on the front of that middle cushion as well. It's a good idea to keep your wildlife supervision handy for safety. Even though this is a very tedious process. And you may be falling asleep, but I promise you'll make it. Once all the hog rings are off, you can go ahead and start working the leather off the cushion. You'll have to peel it back or slide out the bottom with the help of a friend. And then there's Velcro at the headrest to hold that all in place and in shape. Just give it a good yank, and that's it. So at this point, we decided, since we had the leathers off, it would be a good time to install seat heaters that the owner of the car wanted. You've got everything apart already, so it's kind of just best to do it now. To do that, we used a universal seat heater kit available on Amazon. And you'll want to stab a hole through your seat cushion for the cord. And then make some alignment marks where you want your heater pad to be placed on both the seat cushion and the seat back. And then using the same adhesive spray as well as the sticky pads that are on the back of the heater itself, press it firmly down directly onto the seat cushion foam. And then if it's too big, you can go ahead and trim off anything that you need to. As long as you don't cut through the actual coil inside the heater, everything will be fine. Now the fun begins. So make sure you use your steam to loosen up all your leather before you start this process. It's going to be the only thing that helps you get the right shape. And then to use the hog ring pliers, I have the spring-loaded ones, so you can kind of set the ring, the unclosed ring in there, and it'll hold it in place. Not all of them do that though. And then just kind of work your way around with your steamer again to loosen up and warm up the foam as well. It also kind of makes that more pliable and easier to manage. And then just take that loaded hog ring in your pliers, line it up with the metal bar inside the foam and that plastic rail on the edge of the leather, and then just go ahead and squeeze it pretty much as tight as it'll go. And then you'll want to start on one side of these seat leathers, pretty much the reverse of how you took it off, and just work it around and put the same number of hog rings that you took off back in. And these attaching points are pretty important actually for the shape of how the leather lays. So you kind of have to be a little precise in where you're putting things, but fortunately you can use heat and kind of check your progress as you go to make sure that everything's lined up where it should be. I would recommend probably more heat and steam than you think you need when you tuck the bolsters in. And this is the best time to do any bolster repair as well. You can put extra cotton batting or cardboard, maybe some other foam pieces in there as well if you need to kind of reinforce that bolster shape. Once you're happy with the way that looks, then tuck that metal piece back in and the fabric. Pull your seat heater cord through. Pull the flaps over. You'll probably have to pull them pretty far, and then attach those hog rings directly to that steel panel. If you run into anything that doesn't seem to want to reach, try heat first, and then if it still doesn't work, you may have attached a ring in the wrong place. And adjustments can be made, but you will go through a lot of hog rings doing this. And that is the seat cushion. Now we're going to move to the seat back, which is significantly more complicated than the seat cushion. I would recommend turning it inside out before you even start, and then using your steam on it from there to really warm up the leather and make it as pliable as possible. If you need to, wear gloves so you don't burn your hands. Take your time. No heat is too much. You're not gonna melt the leather or anything. And then make sure you line up that Velcro on the back of your new leathers with the channels on the headrest. And you'll probably need a buddy here to hold the seat back while you slide the leather over the shoulder bolsters and everything. It's very tight. It's meant to be. You really have to tug and use heat a lot. It is definitely your friend. Take your time before you attach any hog rings and make sure that it looks the way you want it to before you actually clamp everything down, or approximately the way you want it to. And then just continue attaching your hog rings down in the reverse order of the way you took them off. And do the center cushion section with the heater pad on it last. Once all the hog rings are attached, go ahead and tug that seat cushion down. Make sure that your cord for the heater isn't trapped. And then you get to deal with the U-channel. It was just the biggest pain of this whole job was this U-channel. Even with a friend, it was a massive pain. We had to get so much leverage on this channel to get it to really pop in. But once it does pop in, you can really tell that it's attached. It'll kind of click into place. I don't know if there's a tool that makes this easier, but I wish there was. That's what the inside of the channel looks like if it makes it easier. So do the centers first, and then the two outside flaps. And it's like a tuck there, and then you pull it back. Next, we can just go ahead and start reassembling the seat frame rails. So just put everything back on in reverse order, essentially. Do the actual rails first, and then go ahead and attach all your plastic clips where they need to be routed. They don't need to be in the exact holes, but close. And then you can attach the seat back to the seat cushion. Attach all of your plastic panels and the recliner handle, which is much easier to put back on than it is to take off. And then here we will want to find the metal section that is threaded in the seat back for the seatbelt guide. Cut carefully some small holes in the new leather for the bolts to go through, and then put the bolts in, and it should look great when you're done. Once you're done with the seatbelt guide, we are done with the seats. Ready to move on to wiring up our seat heaters. So the first thing to do here is remove the center console panel. There are body clips and several screws, as well as plugs for your hazards and your convertible top. Just be careful not to break any of the wiring when you pull up on the panel. And then here the owner decided that he wanted to alter his shift boot just a little bit. So if you want to do that as well, you can pop that off. There's some screws holding the frame on. And then there are little plastic hooks, kind of, that hold the leather to that frame. And then next, we marked up and drilled out some holes for the buttons for the seat heaters. And then you can start threading the cables for those buttons through your holes so you can make sure everything's lined up and looks nice and straight. You do want these holes to be of a size that these buttons actually pop in. Otherwise, they're just going to be loose. Cable management is a bit of an issue with universal heater kits, but the S2000 has enough panels that it makes it a little bit easier. You can kind of just tuck those wires wherever it seems convenient and safe. It is a good idea to tape them sometimes out of the way of metal edges so that they don't wear through and cause a short later. And we chose to route these wires to the under dash fuse panel, which required us to go down the center console and then up through the kick panels under the steering column, and then to the fuse box here. We used a add-a-fuse system. And then this is the new shift boot. We are aligning those plastic hooks that I told you about. It's a little bit of a pain, but with some patience you can get it through. And then pop the frame back in and screw it down. It's a good idea to test all of your electronics before you completely install all of your body panels again, just to prevent yourself from doing this a million times. Like we did. Not shown on camera. And then seat install. Once again, be sure to scratch up your paint nice and good for some war wounds. Attach all of your electronics and do your testing before you bolt the seats down. It will be way easier. And once you're sure that they work, then you're done.